What kind of family sells their own daughter and calls it mercy? That was the cruel question hanging in the cold Montana air the morning Clara Brennan's life changed forever. Dawn broke weak and pale over the crossroads outside Silver Ridge. February 1882 painted everything in gray. The frozen ground cracked under wagon wheels. The wind cut through thin cloth like a knife through butter. Clara stood beside her family's wagon, clutching a thin shawl around her shoulders. She was 23, slight and quiet, with eyes that had learned not to hope. Her father counted coins into a merchant's palm. His voice was flat as the prairie. "She'll work hard, got a bad leg, but she can cook, clean, mend, worth what you're paying." Clara didn't move. Her mother kept her gaze low. Her brother leaned against the wagon wheel with a smirk on his face like he was watching a show. The transaction was nearly finished. Clara's limp had sealed her fate years ago. She had fallen from a horse at 14. The bone healed crooked. Her family decided she was useless, unmarriageable, a burden. Better to sell her than feed her. "This is mercy," her father muttered without meeting her eyes. Clara whispered to herself, voice barely louder than the wind. Mercy would have been a bullet. No one heard her. Merchant Gibbs, thick-necked and mean-looking, grabbed Clara's arm and pulled her toward the trading post. She stumbled but caught herself. She didn't cry or beg. Her family rolled away without a single backward glance. From a distant ridge, rancher James Cordell sat on his horse watching. He had stopped only to rest his mount, but something about the scene below caught him. The way Clara stood apart, the way her family avoided her eyes, the way she held herself straight, even when everything around her pushed her down. For a moment, their eyes met. He saw something there, intelligence, pain, but something unbroken too. His hand tightened on the reins. Every instinct screamed at him to ride down and intervene. But what claim did he have? What right? He stayed where he was as Clara disappeared into the trading post. 3 days passed, slow and bitter. Cordell rode into Silver Ridge under a gray sky threatening rain. People nodded respectfully. He was known in town, wealthy, reclusive, fair in business. A widowed man who kept to himself since losing his wife and infant daughter 5 years earlier. He tied his horse outside Gibbs' trading post. Inside smelled of tobacco, old leather, and something sour under the floorboards. Gibbs looked up, eyes sharp. "Cordell, need flour? Coffee?" "Maybe both," James replied. "Heard you got new help." Gibbs shrugged. "Crippled girl, works hard when I'm watching. Sleeps in the shed." James kept his face calm. "Sounds like she earns her keep." Gibbs laughed, a rough sound. Her family practically gave her away. James bought his supplies and asked a few casual questions. Learned Clara worked barefoot on cold floors, slept on straw. Was given scraps for supper. He stepped outside and walked behind the building. There she was, splitting firewood with shaking hands. Her palms were raw and bleeding. But she worked steady. She hummed something soft under her breath. A hymn, maybe a memory of something gentle. When she noticed him, she straightened, wiped her hands on her apron, met his eyes without fear. "You got a name?" he asked. "Clara." Not that it matters to him. It matters. Something passed between them. Not romance, not yet, just recognition. Two lonely souls, seeing each other in a world that preferred to look away. That night, James returned. Gibbs was drunk, loud, and stumbling. His wife, a tired woman with bruised wrists, opened the door. "I want to buy Clara's contract," James said quietly. "Triple what her family took. And this." He handed her a land deed, a small plot, hers alone. She stared at him. Why? Because she deserves better. He'll be angry. "Let him." Mrs. Gibbs woke Clara, whispering fast. "He's taking you. Go. Don't look back." Clara stepped outside with a tiny bundle of belongings. Fear and confusion stiffened her posture. Another sale, another owner, another unknown. James said nothing. just helped her into the wagon and drove into the night. They traveled through darkness until the sky softened to pale gold. Clara sat stiff with her hands folded in her lap. The only sounds were hooves on frozen ground and the wind moving through dry grass. Finally, she spoke, voice quiet from cold and fear. "Why did you buy me?" James didn't answer quickly. "I didn't buy you, I bought your contract. You're free to leave come spring when the pass opens. Till then, you have a warm bed, food, honest work, nothing you don't choose." Clara turned to look at him, really looked. His face was weathered by sun and grief, but his eyes were steady. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Company, if you're willing. Work, if you're able. Nothing you're not." She studied him, then faced the road again. After a while, she told her story. Flat, lifeless. Years of being told she was worthless had stripped emotion away. James listened. When she finished, he spoke low. "My wife died 5 years ago. Her and our daughter. Since then, I've had land, money, everything except a reason to live. Then I saw you and something changed." Quote, "The sun climbed higher, the ranch came into view, a solid cabin, a barn with fresh paint, cottonwoods along a creek." Clara stepped down from the wagon. She touched the cabin door frame. Solid wood, a home built with care. James stood back, letting her choose to enter or not. She looked at him. "Thank you." He nodded. "Welcome home, Clara." Inside, the fire was laid. A quilt rested on a clean bed. A table was set for two. For the first time in years, Clara felt the weight in her chest lift just enough to breathe. Clara settled into the ranch slowly, like someone afraid the ground might shift under her feet at any moment. For the first 2 weeks, life moved in a gentle rhythm. Dawn chores, midday work, quiet evenings by the fire. She learned the ranch as if she had always belonged there. Feeding chickens felt natural. Mending gear, cooking stew, organizing supplies, everything her family once mocked, James treated as valuable skills. Here, her limp barely mattered. She chose tasks she could manage, moved at her own pace, and grew stronger every day. James taught her things without talking down to her. He showed her the feed schedules and let her calculate measurements. When she solved numbers faster than he could write them down, he stared in surprise. "Your father was a fool," he said. Clara looked away, but a small smile slipped across her face. One bright morning in March, they rode into town for supplies. Silver Ridge was small, with wood boardwalks and curious eyes in every doorway. As soon as Clara stepped down from the wagon, the whispers began. That's the girl her family sold. Cordell took her in. Wonder what he wants with her. Clara's jaw tightened. She stared at the ground, wishing she could disappear. James stood beside her like a wall of quiet strength. He said nothing, but he didn't step away. Inside the general store, he bought her new boots. Thick leather, warm lining, proper fit. Clara stared at them like they were something too fine to touch. "You didn't have to," she murmured. "I know," James said, "but I wanted to." That evening by the fire, he taught her how to read the ranch ledgers. Clara picked it up fast, her eyes running over numbers with ease. James leaned back, amazed. "You should have been teaching school," he said, "not scrubbing floors." Some dreams hurt too much to speak aloud. Clara only shrugged. "Some dreams die early." James shook his head. "Then we'll bury those old dreams and build new ones." Later that night, a letter arrived, Clara's father's handwriting, addressed to James. James opened it, read a few lines, and without hesitation fed it to the fire. Clara saw the flames flicker across his face. "What was it?" she asked. "Nothing that matters." But they both knew her family hadn't forgotten her. 2 days later, news arrived from Moses Trent, an older rancher and town elder. He rode up slow, his horse kicking dust as he stopped near the porch. "Got trouble coming," Moses said. "Your family heard you're here, Clara. They're on their way. And the law's on shaky ground. Territorial rules say an unwed woman with a condition can be claimed by her family if they argue she's unsound. Clara froze. Cold fear crawled up her spine. She slipped inside the cabin and began packing her small bundle. It didn't take long. She didn't own much. James found her minutes later. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Leaving," she whispered. "Before they come, I bring trouble." "No," his voice came firm, strong. "You brought this place back to life." She shook her head. "James, I was dead. 14 years of being told I was a mistake. I don't want to drag you into their poison." James stepped closer. "Clara, I spent 5 years walking around like a shadow. Then you walked through that door, and I remembered what living felt like. I won't let you go." "You don't understand," she whispered. "My family will destroy this." "Destroy you. Then we'll fight them together." That night, a sudden spring blizzard swept across the plains. Snow piled against the windows. Wind howled like a wounded animal. The temperature dropped fast, trapping them inside. Clara sat near the fire, arms around herself. James added wood to the flames, then sat beside her, close, but not touching. "Tell me about her," Clara said softly. "Sarah, quote." So he did. He told her about meeting Sarah when they were young and foolish, about how she loved the land, the horses, the mountains, how her smile lit up a room, how she had wanted children more than anything. He told her about the childbirth that went wrong, how he had to choose between saving Sarah or the baby, how he lost them both. "I should have done something different," he said, voice raw. "Should have ridden faster. Should have gotten the doctor sooner. Should have—" "You did everything you could," Clara said, her voice fierce. "You can't carry it forever." "Can't seem to put it down." Clara reached out and took his hand, a simple touch, but it carried years of hidden pain. "My family said I was God's mistake," she whispered, "a punishment." "They were wrong." James turned toward her, eyes burning. "You're the first real thing I've felt in 5 years. If that's a mistake, then I'll take 1,000 more." The storm raged outside, but inside something gentler was growing. Walls built by pain and grief began to crack. They talked until the fire burned low. Shared truths neither had spoken aloud in years. Clara fell asleep on his shoulder. James stayed still, afraid to break the fragile peace that had finally found them. Morning came soft and clean. The snow glittered, but on the horizon a dust cloud rose. Riders. Her family was coming. By midday, Silver Ridge was buzzing. Clara and James stood together in the town square as the Brennans' wagon rolled in. People whispered from every doorway. Jacob Brennan climbed down first. His jaw was tight, his eyes cold. "There she is," he said loud. "My daughter, stolen from honest work." "She wasn't stolen," James answered. His voice stayed calm, but danger simmered beneath it. "She was being mistreated. I bought her contract legally." Jacob's lawyer stepped forward. "Your Honor will see this clearly in court. Territorial law protects family custody." The crowd murmured. The law was unclear. Anything could happen. Then James did something that shattered Clara's heart. He reached inside his coat and pulled out money. "Here's $500, he said. "Take it and leave." Quote. Clara froze. Money again. Always money. "I'm not for sale," she said. Her voice broke like a cracked branch. "Not ever again." She ran. Her limp barely slowed her. Down the street. Into the alley. Gone. James tried to follow, but the lawyer blocked him. "Court hearing tomorrow morning. Judge decides custody." James clenched his jaw. Clara hid in his barn loft, tears falling onto her knees. James stood below, helpless. "Clara," he called softly. "I wasn't trying to buy you. I was trying to make them leave." "Always money," she sobbed. "That's all I am, a transaction." "No one hears me." He called her name again. She didn't answer. That night, James walked to Sarah's grave, fell to his knees. For the first time in years, he cried. "I failed you," he whispered, "and I'm failing her too." Behind him, Moses appeared out of the shadows. "You're doing it wrong," he said. "You can't buy freedom. You fight for it." James looked up. "What if it's not enough?" "Then at least you'll have done right." At the same time, Clara found an old box in the barn loft, Sarah's journal. She read the last line again and again. "If I do not survive, tell James it's all right to live again." Love doesn't run out. He just has to be brave enough to reach for it. Clara closed the book, tears falling. She understood everything now. At sunrise, she found James at the table. He lifted his head slowly. "I'm not leaving," she said. "And neither am I," he answered. They were ready. Together. The courthouse in Silver Ridge had never been so full. People stood shoulder to shoulder, packed into every corner. Some came for gossip. Some came out of curiosity. Some came because they had nothing better to do on a Monday morning. Snow still clung to boots and hats from the storm the night before. Judge Harrison, a man in his 60s with sharp eyes and a worn face, sat behind the heavy oak desk. His gavel hit once, echoing loud enough to silence the buzzing crowd. "Brennan family petitioned to reclaim custody of Clara Brennan," he said. "State your case." Jacob Brennan stepped forward, his jaw tight, his posture stiff. He tried to look like a concerned father, but bitterness lived in his eyes. "Your Honor," he began, "my daughter was taken from honest work. She's been led astray. We only want to bring her home where she belongs." His lawyer, Pritchard, oily as lamp grease, stepped up next. "Miss Brennan is an unwed woman with a physical condition sold by her family for care and labor. Mr. Cordell purchased her without family consent. The law allows the family to reclaim her for her own protection." The crowd murmured at the word sold. Some shook their heads. Others whispered under their breath. Then Mrs. Gibbs was called as a witness. She wavered on her feet, eyes darting toward her husband, sitting in the back row. Fear tightened her shoulders. Miss Brennan seemed troubled, she forced out, unfit, strange. Clara's heart twisted, a lie out of fear. The judge nodded, turned to James. "Your defense." James stood tall, steady, but Clara saw tension in his hands. "Your Honor," he said, placing the contract on the table. "I purchased her contract legally. The conditions she lived in were cruel. I gave her shelter, food, and honest work. She is not my property. She is free." The judge leaned back. "Legal paperwork proves purchase. It doesn't prove good intentions. Could be, you're just a different kind of cage, Mr. Cordell." A painful silence followed. James didn't look away. "I'm not," he said quietly, "but words won't prove that." Then Clara stepped forward. The room fell silent. Even the judge straightened. She walked with her limp, slower than others, but straight-backed and steady. She stopped at the front, facing the judge. "Your Honor, may I speak?" He nodded. Clara looked out across the sea of faces. People who once whispered she was worthless now hung on her every breath. "I was called lame," she said. "I was called a burden. I was sold because my family wanted one less mouth to feed. They told me I was God's mistake." The crowd stirred, the weight of her words sinking deep. She pointed at her father. "That man didn't want to protect me. He wanted to get rid of me." Jacob's face flushed red. Clara kept going, voice clear. "Mr. Cordell didn't buy me. He saw me. He let me choose who I want to be. I work his land. I manage his books. I keep his ranch running. I'm not weak. I'm not broken. And I'm not going with people who treat me like I'm nothing." Then she faced her father again. "If being able to think, work, and choose for myself makes me unsound, then judge me, but judge them first. What kind of family sells their own child?" The room erupted. Gasps, shouts, whispers. Even those who disliked James looked shaken. Judge Harrison slammed his gavel. "Order!" Mrs. Gibbs suddenly stood, hands shaking. "I lied," she blurted. "Clara wasn't troubled. My husband made me say it. She was the kindest, strongest girl who ever walked into that place." The judge turned to Moses Trent next, who rose with slow dignity. "I've known James Cordell 20 years, Moses said. "He's honorable, and Clara's got more sense than half the folks in this courtroom." Then James stepped forward. "I've got land, money, reputation. I'd give it all up before I let her go back to that. She's not my property, she's my partner, if she'll have it." The judge studied Clara. "Miss Brennan, what do you want?" Clara lifted her chin. "I want freedom, a home, a life I choose." Judge Harrison nodded slowly, then lifted the gavel. "Contract is void," he said. "Clara Brennan is a free citizen with full rights. Family petition dismissed. And Jacob Brennan, selling your child is a mark of shame. Get out of my courtroom." The gavel struck. It was done. Clara exhaled a breath she had been holding her whole life. James placed a gentle hand on her back. The crowd burst into applause. Some cried. Some smiled. Some simply stood stunned. Outside the courthouse, Clara turned to James. "We won," she whispered. "You won," he corrected softly. "I just stood beside you." 2 months passed. Spring warmed the land. The ranch bloomed. Fields of wildflowers, green grass bending in the wind, cottonwoods full of life. Clara knelt in the garden planting tomatoes. Her limp had faded to almost nothing. Heavy work and good food had healed what years of neglect had broken. James teased her about spacing the plants too far apart. "They need room to breathe," she said. "They're vegetables, Clara. They don't breathe." "Everything breathes," she replied, "if you pay attention." Moses rode up with news one morning. Brennan family left the territory. Farm sold. They're gone. Clara felt nothing but quiet relief. Sunday morning, she and James walked into church together. The whispers she once feared fell silent. Slowly, one by one, people stood, not in disapproval, but in respect. That evening, they sat on the porch as the sun painted the sky gold and pink. James handed her a sealed document. "What's this?" she asked. "Deed to half the ranch," he said. "Partner means partner." Clara stared at her name written on the paper. Real, permanent, true. Tears filled her eyes as she leaned in and kissed his cheek. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me." "Thank you," he replied, "for letting me." They sat together as twilight settled. The land stretched wide and endless. Horses grazed. The creek murmured. The cabin glowed with warm firelight. "What now?" Clara asked. James smiled. "We build. Whatever comes next, we build it together." Worth wasn't measured in what a person could do. It was measured in who they became when someone finally believed in them. And here, on this quiet Montana ranch, 2 broken hearts had found a home.